Well, good day. Welcome back to the channel. Well, as you may know, I have an IBM Selectric Type 721. It's the so-called Selectric 1. And I've gone out today to my local typewriter repair shop, John Lewis's shop, and I picked up about almost a dozen type elements. It's kind of fun collecting type elements for the IBMs because that's one of the major features of these machines is if you want a dozen different typefaces, you don't have to collect a dozen different typewriters. You can just collect the elements. And they're a lot smaller, less expensive, less domestic turmoil. If you have a significant other who has a problem with your typewriter collection, just say, look, this little bin is the equivalent of 12 typewriters. You should thank me for getting these. Anyways, so I noticed after I got a few of these home, some are actually unopened. There was one of them that was like wrapped in the red little container, had the original plastic cellophane around it, never opened. Had a couple others in the original cardboard containers that were unopened, which is kind of cool. But several of these type elements were of the older style hinge. So these are the type elements for the Selectric 1 and 2. They will have a white triangle and white letters. Either a solid triangle means they're 10 character per inch, or a hollow white triangle is 12. If you have anything that's yellow printing, that's for the Selectric 3s. If you have a Selectric 1 and 2, don't get the yellow printing, okay? These type elements are made either by IBM or I have some made by GP. So a couple of these were broken, that had broken hinges, and specifically the ones with broken hinges have metal pins or metal covers on the ends of the hinge and only a plastic part in the middle. The all plastic hinge ones on the little lever, the all plastic hinge ones are stronger. They're the newer design. So it's kind of counterintuitive. You think with the metal parts it would be stronger. No, the ones with the two little metal parts on either end of the hinge are the weak ones. And if you happen to see one of these where you open up the hinge, the lever, and you notice the hinge is cracked, don't put it on your machine, because once you put it on the machine and it breaks, it's really difficult to get that type element off because you have to figure out a way to spread the two metal tines of the spring apart without the hinge working. It's a bunch of little fiddling with a couple tiny jeweler's screwdrivers to try to get it off. Okay, so I had a couple type elements with broken hinges. I decided, okay, I guess I'll have to go find newer ones of that kind, right? And then I started thinking, hey, maybe I can figure out how to reuse these type elements and use them without the lever operating top lock. And so what I've done is I've saved both of those type elements. I put the parts in baggies marked with each one. I have Scribe 12 and I have a Courier 12. And I figured out how to put these type elements on and lock them on with the spring pretty easily. Not much harder than with working levers. So let's go look and see how you can reuse these type elements with broken hinges. So this is the fragile type hinge of the type elements. You notice it has a metal top and bottom and a plastic middle, and the plastic middle is the only hinge part that there is. So these things are very fragile. Before I ever put one of these style on, I usually open and close it several times to make sure it's not going to crack, because once it goes on broken, it's difficult to get off. Okay, so if you turn it over, you'll notice there are 4 molding marks, little black melted plastic molding marks on the inside, and that's what's holding this black cap on. And so to make this type element reliable, let's say this lever hinge is already broken, or if you don't want it to break when it goes on the machine, because again it's very difficult to remove when that happens, I like to use one of these Opinel craft knives made in France, and I will pry underneath the black cap and I will wedge it up and I will crack those little molded studs. I go around all 5 or 4 of those and I will crack those studs and break them off. And this is what it'll kind of look like once you break them off. They're actually studs that go in the holes here, like that. But you'll be able just to remove the black part, and underneath it will be the metal spring. And so what you want to do is take the black cap that has the name of the typeface on it, save it. There may also be a little metal disc. Save that, put it in the baggie with it, and then especially you want to save the clip, because the clip we are going to use to reattach this type element whenever we want to use the type element. Well, first we're going to remove the previous type element. Flip up the lever to the right, lift up by the lever and remove. So for these broken type elements, I use a plastic baggie to store all the parts in. Here is the broken type element, and you'll notice this little rectangular molding mark on the left with a number molded into it. That number needs to go to the left as you place the element onto the shaft. Turn it a little bit until it slips down on the shaft so that the groove in the tip of the shaft is up above the surface of the element. And again, this little molded mark right here is toward the left. Next, you're going to get the spring, and you want to orient the spring so the two loops are to the left and the two horizontal tines are on the bottom like this. So this is the proper orientation. The tines are on the bottom, they're pointing to the right. The two loops are on the left. You're going to now place the rear tine over the rear edge of the shaft and slip it forward like that until both of the tines slip into the groove on the front and back of the shaft. The type element has now been installed. We'll turn on the machine, do a carriage return, a carrier return, and we will test to make sure it's working. This particular element is called Scribe 12, and I like it. And it was good that we were able to salvage this type element instead of throwing it out because the clip was broken. Okay, to remove the type element with the broken clip, first of all, put it in lowercase mode, turn off the typewriter. I'm using a set of snap ring pliers on the right side between the two tines, the two tongs. I'm going to squeeze them apart so I lift up the front tong off of the element. Get your thumbnail underneath it. And now once the front tine is out of the groove, you can push the rear one out of the groove, and there it is in my hands. Now, if you don't have a set of snap ring pliers, you can use a thin jeweler's flat blade screwdriver. You want to force the front tine or tong out away from the groove and lift it up. Kind of like that. Get your finger underneath it, underneath the little front loop. And once the front tine is out of the groove, you can carefully push it to the rear so the rear one comes out of the groove, and then without dropping it, you can pick it up out of the machine, off of the shaft, and now the type element should lift straight out. Well, I think it's pretty cool being able to salvage these type elements with broken hinges, because some of these typefaces may be difficult to find in the newer hinge style. So having all your little parts in a baggie, having the baggie labeled with what type element it is, it's not that hard to put on and take off. You just need an extra little tool like a little jeweler's screwdriver or maybe a snap ring plier. So there were these little drawer bins that were made for these type elements. I think they go 9 to a drawer, but I'm just using a little Tupperware dish with some bubble wrap in the bottom. I have this hodgepodge miscellaneous collection. Some of these type elements don't have a box or a container at all. Some have the red IBM container, and some are in the original cardboard boxes. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. Oh yeah, there's also these kind that have the little round container like that. So a variety of containers. It makes sense for me just to put them all in a little box. And then what I've done is I've done a type test on all the elements I have. What the name of the element is, a type sample of every one of them, and then I even have instructions on the back on the third page on how to remove and install the elements that have a broken clip, as you just saw. So I keep these little sheets in the Tupperware container as ready reference. And then also, when I was down at John Lewis's, he made a copy of the IBM manual that has a lot of the different Selectric type styles. So I can reference these type styles and see about what kind of new ones I might want to look for, and then what are the kind of the cool ones. So going through these various type elements, it looks like letter Gothic is one of the most common type, because there was a lot of these duplicate ones in the supply that John Lewis had. And I noticed, though, he had both IBM letter Gothics and he had the GP brand letter Gothics. But I noticed, looking at the type sample, there is a very slight difference in some of the letters between the GP letter Gothic and the IBM letter Gothic. So probably good reason to collect both, right? But I did get some interesting samples. So here's the Old English for 10 or 12. This is a GP branded ball. It's a very cool typeface. Here is the Oriental for 10 or 12, also a GP branded typeface. This kind of reminds me of the lettering you might see on an American Chinese restaurant menu. Then the calligraphy for 10 or 12, that's also a GP ball. It's a very cool typeface as well. And then finally, the IBM Symbol 12. And of course, there are no English letters on here. It's mostly Greek and some mathematical symbols. And the instruction sheet that I got from John Lewis, there's a cross-reference guide that tells you which letters on the keyboard do which symbol. So that's pretty much necessary if you're going to use the Symbol 12 type element. Okay, let's look at some of these typefaces. So we'll start up here on the top with letter Gothic, Script, and that's a GP ball, Elite 72, Light Italic is a GP ball, Artisan is a GP ball. I really like Artisan. Calligraphy, look at the calligraphy, it's a GP ball. Old English, Oldie English, you notice that? It's a GP ball. Courier 12, this is one of the broken balls. That's why the original imprint, it broke when I put it on. That is a Courier 12. It has the alternate characters in place of the 1 and the exclamation mark, so you have to type a lowercase l for a 1 with Courier 12. Letter Gothic, this is the GP version of Letter Gothic, and I think the Q is slightly wider on it than the IBM version of Letter Gothic. Italic Courier, that's a cool typeface also. Then we have Script, very classy typeface. Here's the GP Oriental typeface. Dual Gothic, very nice typeface. Letter Gothic, again. Large Elite, and this is the IBM Symbol type element. This was the broken Courier 12. I was able to figure out how to reuse. And it requires you to use a lowercase l also for the number 1. And the Scribe 12 that was also broken, and it too requires the use of a lowercase l for the number 1. And both of those were IBM type elements. They're the old style, partly metal hinges that are fragile. Well, you may never use all of these type elements in practice. There may be only a few of them that you're really interested in, but it is fun to collect them if you can find them for a good value, especially, and they don't really take up that much room for a dozen or more type elements. It's fun to collect them, and that's one of the real benefits of having a replaceable element typewriter like the IBM Selectric line. Well, I'm going to have fun with this, and I hope to maybe start using more of these type elements in my writings. That'll be fun. Well, this is Joe Van Cleve, and I'm figuring out new ways to stay creative with typewriters. I hope you do the same. Have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.